Sorry about that. This is part two. There's a grave outside the cemetery in Krakow. Yes, you were there. And it says over there, Po Nitman Yosef Hakamtzon HaKodesh. Here lies the holy miser, Yosef, the holy miser. It's a very strange grave. It's mamish outside the cemetery? Or it's in the corner?
No, it's in the cemetery.
It's in the cemetery.
It's supposed to be right next to the Ramah.
It's supposed to be next to the Ramah?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But I saw the stone next to the Ramah.
Right.
You couldn't read it.
You couldn't read it. So anyway, at least the story goes that this is a person who's, the way Shlomo Kabbalah says, is a very lonely grave sitting there, and it says, here lies the holy miser, Yosela, the holy miser. The Ramah that he's referring to is the main commentary on it's not so much a commentary, but actually on the Shulchan Aruch that we spoke about, the Mechaber last week. He gives his own version of the halacha, and many times disagreeing with the Mechaber itself. And for the most part, I think today we paskin like the Ramah, if I'm not mistaken. I actually am a descendant of the Ramah. I have a family tree, and not directly, but a little zigzag, but we can get to him. So what's the story about this grave? So the story goes that this goes back a couple of hundred years, in the 1500s, I think, that there was a very wealthy person. His name was Yosela, and he was known as a big miser.
Why don't we sing it?
Huh? Yosela, Yosela, Yosela. It's really such a great song. You know, maybe I'll definitely bring it to you guys. Anyway, so nobody can get any money from him. People would come to him, and it was very strange. They would come to him and ask him for money. They'd knock on his door, and every poor person said, you know, my story is so bitter and so tragic that I'll get through to this guy. You know, nobody can have such a cold heart. So people used to knock on his door, and Yosela would open up the door with a big smile, and he would say, come on in. And he'd sit him down, and he says, oh, my dear friend, you know, you must be hungry. He brought him out some food, and some cake, and some cappuccino, and he would feed him, and he would say, how are you, my friend? What's your name? My name is Avremela. He says, Avremela, are you married? Yes. How many children? He says, I have 10 children. He says, and what do you do? He says, well, I used to be a water carrier, but now for the last couple of years, you know, I don't have a job, and you know, so I'd like you to, you know, and he would listen. He says, oh, that's so terrible, you know. He says, he says, so what do you want? So he says, well, if you can help me with $10 a week, with 10 rubles a week, you know, it would be good. And all of a sudden, Yosela's demeanor would change completely. He'd get up, start yelling at the guy. He says, what are you, nuts? What are you, crazy? I'm going to give you my hard-earned money. Takes him and tells him, get out of my house. And that's the way he would treat everybody. Yosela, Yosela. And then one day there's a commotion in town, and I forgot. Then one person comes to him, also tries, and the Chevra Kedisha, the burial society, comes to him and says, look, Yosela, you can't take the money with you. He says, why don't you give us some of your money? There's so many poor people here in town. Give us some of your money. And he says, no, I'm not giving you. I'm going to give anybody any money. He says, Yosela, you can't take it with you. He says, I don't care. I'm not giving it. He says, Yosela, if you don't give us some of your money, we're not going to bury you. And he says, I don't care. All my life I've fended for myself. I've done everything for myself. I'm going to bury myself. I don't need you. And sure enough, it happened one day. There was a commotion in town, and the rabbi says, "What's going on? What's going on?" He says, "Oh, nothing. That miserable person, that horrible miser Yosela died, and nobody wants to bury him. He's laying in the middle of this gutter over there in the street." Yosela, Yosela. So a day goes by, 2 days goes by, 3 days go by, and he's sitting there, and Yosela has a wife, and finally somebody came, a couple of people came and said, "Look, you can't just leave him there forever." So they took him to the corner of the cemetery, and they buried him over there. And they put him there. This, let's say, happened on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Thursday night, there's a knock on the rabbi's door, and a poor person comes and says, "Rabbi, I don't have any money for Shabbos." So the rabbi tells him, "Look, my dear friend, I know you for years. You haven't worked for years. Why are you coming to me now? Where have you been the last 5-10 years?" Yasala. Yeah. I'm not doing any justice to the story, but nevertheless. So he tells the rabbi, it's a strange thing. He says, for the last, who knows how many years, every Thursday night, there's an envelope under my door with exactly the amount of money that I needed to support my family. Wow, unbelievable. A few minutes later, the next person comes and says, "Rabbi, I need some money for Shabbos. How much do you need?" He says, "I need $3. And the next person says he needs $5. And they're all giving the same stories. That every Thursday night or Friday morning, there was an envelope under their broken door. You really know the story. Under my broken door, my broken window, there's an envelope. And the rabbi realizes that there's a connection over here, and he realizes that it must be Yosela who would go around Thursday nights and Friday mornings to place these envelopes. And he goes, but how did he know exactly how much everybody needed? So they all repeated the stories that he brought them into the house, he gave them the 21 questions thing, and then he knew the details of everybody's family. And he realizes that this was a very holy man. So he calls a fast the next day, Sunday, whatever it was. He calls in shul and he says, "We have to fast." We all made fun of him. We all threw stones at him. And he opens up the Holy Ark and he's screaming, "Yasala, Yasala, you're a holy miser, Yasala." And he was so emotional about it that he fainted right in front. The rabbi fainted in front of the ark. And he had a dream, and in his dream he dreamt that he saw Yosela, and he went over to Yosela and he says, "Yosela, we're sorry, we didn't do you right. Please forgive us, please." So he says, "There's nothing to forgive. There's nothing to forgive. I have it here better than any place. I'm here together with Avram, with Yitzchak, with Yaakov in front of me. Eliyahu is in the side of me. David HaMelech is over here. I have everything here. But there's one thing I don't have here. The envelopes. There's nobody to give envelopes here." And he says, "Don't worry, tell the people I forgive them. There's no problem." And he woke up and he told everybody what a holy man Yosela was. 4. This is Shlomo Kavach speaking. 1974, I attend a convention of all the religions of the world. And all the major religions were there. It was for 1 week. And every night, another religion is the host religion. And the theme of that night would be of that religion. And he says, being that the Jewish religion is the oldest religion there is, so I was the host or whatever of the first night. And of course, everything was prepared kosher, and we're all sitting there, and the leaders of all the religions were there, and they asked me to get up and speak. So he says, I don't know why. For some reason, this story about Yossele, the holy miser, came to my mind. So I got up and I told over this story. He says there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Everybody was very emotional about it. And that was it. The next day was supposed to be the Catholic or the Christian night, but something happened. The high priest couldn't make it. There was a problem with something else. Bottom line is, the assistant priest, he says his name was Joe. Joe come over to him and says, look, Rabbi, we were so taken in by your story yesterday. It's my night, but please get up and repeat the story again. So he says, I got up and I repeated the story again the second time, the second night, and again there wasn't a dry eye in the house. For the rest of the week, after each night, Joe came over to me, the assistant priest, and he says, Rabbi, please tell me the story again. And it was kind of strange, but every night I take a walk with him and I tell him the story. And on the night before last, he says, look, tomorrow night I'm leaving, but one more time I got to hear the story. So he tells him the story again. Yossele, Yossele. So he tells Shlomo Kaber, he says, this is my story. This is the assistant priest. I don't know what word they use for that. He says, last week or 2 weeks ago, I get a call from my mother that she's very sick. She has 3 days to live. The doctors told her she has 3 days to live. So I went to visit her, and she says to me, Joe, my son, I'm dying, but there's something I have to tell you before I die. Your name is not Joe. Your name is Yossele. You were named after Yossele, the holy miser. Yossele. And she tells him that during World War II she was injured, and a German soldier saved her from death, took him in, healed her, and eventually married her, and under one condition, that she could never reveal that she was Jewish. And her whole life, I gave birth to you. You're obviously Jewish, but because it goes after the mother. And but now that I'm about to leave this world, I have to tell you, your name is not Joe. Your name is Yossele. And for 3 days and for 3 nights, she told me everything there is about the Jewish religion. She told me how holy it is to be Jewish, and how special it is to be Jewish, and how our mitzvahs, are everything. And she left this world after 3 days. And I didn't know what to do. I started crying and screaming. And for 3 days I'm screaming to God, whoever my God is. He says, what am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be Jewish, or am I supposed to be Christian? He said, all my life, I've dedicated my life to Christianity, whatever. And my father is also big in the church or something, and a very powerful person. And I can't hurt him. And what do I do? What do I do? And after 3 days, I said to myself, right before I came to this convention, I said to myself, if God gives me a sign, one way or the other, I'll know what to do. And the sign should be, if anybody ever in my life tells me over the story of Yossele, because his mother told him the whole story of Yossele, who she named him that. I forgot to say that before. So if anybody ever tells me that story out of nowhere, then I'll know that that's the sign that I need to be who I am. And here I come right afterwards, and I hear this story from Yossele, and now it's clear to me. It's clear to me what I need to be. And he pulls out a plane ticket from his pocket. He says, you see, I have a plane ticket here. I'm leaving tomorrow night to Jerusalem. You won't hear from me for a very, very long time. because I'm not even telling my father. I can't hurt his feeling. I'm just going to disappear out of the scene, and I know what I got to do. 5 years later, Shlomo Kabel says he comes into his office, and he sees an envelope. Rabbi Shlomo Kabel, I think the address is 319 West 79th Street, New York, New York. That's where his shul is. He turns it over, and it says, Yossele from Krakow. And he opens it up, and he reads, and he says, Dear Shlomo, I can never thank you for what you've done for me. I'm here in the holy city of Jerusalem. Tomorrow night, I'm getting married. I'm marrying a woman that looked like my grandmother, probably, and you won't recognize me if you come here because I have a long beard, and I don't have a cross hanging in front of me, and I have payas, and I'm learning Torah, and I can never thank you enough for giving me my life. Signed, Yossele from Krakow. Yossele, Yossele. Okay, I got to daven. Take it.